It's time to walk with the dead, because we are covering zombies in this episode. Now, zombies are an interesting subgenre of found footage films because zombies have something interesting in common with found footage. When zombie movies first began, they were all about voodoo and mysterious Haitian magic. All of the stories were about colonialism and voodoo masters and things like that. But then a brilliant guy named George A. Romero came along in 1968 and completely reinvented them. Instead of the magic of the voodoo zombies, he turned to more real-world terror. Dead bodies have come back to life, and the only explanation seems to be related to the return of the Venus space probe. So science replaces mysticism, and the location of the terror moves from sugarcane factories and plantations in Haiti to houses in the suburbs. The horror becomes relatable because it looks like the lives we all live. That's similar to the evolution of horror movies, too. For a long time, horror movies leaned into the traditional mysterious style of narrative horror film, with its elaborate cinematography and moody music. But eventually, it started to evolve into the more realistic style of nonfiction films like documentaries. The found footage film made horror movies more frightening by embracing the rough edges and imitating real footage. And it's also interesting to note that the zombie found footage film phenomenon didn't really exist until George Romero started that too. After his original Living Dead trilogy ended in the mid-1980s, he brought it back to life with Land of the Dead in 2005. And 2 years later, he created a reboot of the series, Diary of the Dead, that restarted the story from the point of view of a filmmaker, recording the entire zombie outbreak as it happens. Now, the only zombie found footage film of note before Diary of the Dead was The Zombie Diaries, a low-budget release that came out the year before. But after Romero made his found footage entry, the floodgates opened, and we got a lot more zombie found footage films. Now, some of them were slight reinventions of the zombie, such as the other 2007 release, the Spanish-language film Wreck, which framed the zombies as what seemed like a disease outbreak before being revealed as something else entirely. And the same goes for Quarantine, the English language remake of Wreck. But other times, it was less about reinventing the zombie and more about reinventing the way that we interact with them because of the presence of a camera. For example, in the anthology film VHS 2, there's a sequence where a man wearing a GoPro on his head is bitten by a zombie. And then we see the adventures of a hungry zombie from the zombie's point of view. That segment, by the way, was directed by Eduardo Sanchez, one of the directors of the Blair Witch Project, and one of the people who made found footage films a hugely popular genre. Speaking of popular, what is it about zombies that makes found footage films so popular for filmmakers? I think the easiest answer to that is that zombies are a great monster for low-budget found footage movies because they're basically just people with a little bit of makeup on. And that makes it an achievable monster for filmmakers in any kind of film, but especially in found footage films. And because zombies aren't really complicated performances, it's not as hard to find a bunch of them. Anyone willing to put on a little makeup and then shamble around and moan can pretty much be a zombie. You also don't always need a lot of them. You know, there have been some great zombie movies that don't have very many zombies in them. Good example is 2013's Pretty Dead, which focuses primarily on a single woman slowly transforming into a zombie and how it changes her life. The other thing that makes zombie movies so popular is that these stories don't happen in special places like spaceships or the middle of the woods or a castle. These stories happen in houses, in malls, in cars. Those are ordinary places with ordinary people. That makes them easier to make, in addition to making them easier for audiences to relate to. And let's not forget that Night of the Living Dead entered the public domain as soon as it was made because of a copyright mistake. That meant that the Romero zombie concept wasn't copyrighted, so anyone could use it. That would be like if The Purge came out today, but someone, forgot to copyright it. Of course, then there would suddenly be dozens of low-budget movies about The Purge. So that explains why there are so many of them. But what is it that makes us as an audience member love them? And it's not just found footage films. Zombie movies are one of the biggest subgenres in all of horror film. I think that one of the reasons we love them is because zombie movies combine so many other different subgenres into a single kind of film. Zombie movies are an iconic horror monster, yes, but they're also a plague or outbreak movie, sometimes a post-apocalypse film. Often they're also siege movies when zombies are trying to break in and attack the humans. Of course, they're also sci-fi hybrids, and they even touch on themes of cannibalism. There aren't many other types of movies that are able to tap into that many different subgenres at the same time and not feel overstuffed or contradictory. And of course, zombies are popular because they make a great symbolic stand-in for social issues. In Night of the Living Dead, it was racism. Dawn of the Dead dealt with rampant consumerism. and Day of the Dead was about the dangers of unchecked militarism. Zombies make for a great representation of an abstract fear in our society, and that's one of the reasons that I think that we love movies about them so much. But, hey, that's just how I feel. Let's hear from someone else who knows a lot about this subgenre.
Hi, I'm Richard Raaphorst. I'm a movie director and storyboard artist. 10 years ago, I made a movie called Frankenstein's Army. Maybe you've seen it. It's a horror comedy about war, because I was always afraid that another world war would happen in my life. Film is about a Russian squad on a secret mission to invade a village in Nazi Germany, because there is a German ancestor of Baron von Frankenstein collaborating with the Nazi Germans to create an army of robotic super creatures. However, they need to hurry up because the doctor has his own plan to collaborate with the Americans. So the Russians need to hurry up to steal his secret and to give it to Stalin for his ultimate victory. My favorite part is towards the end of the movie, when we improvise a scene where Karel Rodin is suing the German brains to the Russian brains, and he just, like Rodin, just do whatever you like. We put on the camera and he was just fiddling around with the scalpel in the brains, and he was making jokes that there was too much brain on the left side and so on. That was really one of my best memories on the set.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk across your screen. And now I have some seasoned survivors who know how to stay alive in this undead hellscape. Let's hear from some found footage experts and superfans in the segment we call Found Faculty.
Something interesting about zombie found footage is that it's something of an outlier in the found footage genre, in that it doesn't lend itself easily to the suspension of disbelief. Stuff that goes bump in the night. Everybody has had some kind of spooky encounter in their house. Serial killers recording their crimes. That actually happens. With zombies, they have become such a cultural phenomenon. They've become, almost this Freddy Krueger, this almost Mickey Mouse of the horror world. They're so familiar, they're so almost domesticated. Everybody knows what a zombie is and that they don't exist. And so how do you make that real feeling within the context of a subgenre built around the suspension of disbelief and built around the idea that what you're seeing really happened? And so it takes an incredibly talented filmmaker and an incredibly skilled writer in order to pull off a zombie found footage movie that's actually frightening. Now, is that to say that the zombie found footage movie is necessarily bad or uninteresting or not good, not fun? No, they can be great. George Romero's Diary of the Dead is a primary example of that. But the zombie found footage movie is more about the fun of the special effects. It's more about how cool is the zombie design. It's more about seeing another entry in this canon of monsters that you're a fan of. But it's very, very difficult, if not next to impossible, to do with a zombie found footage movie what it is with other types of found footage movies, and that's make it seem 100% real and terrifying to the audience.
I like to joke that the zombie movie is interesting, but I want to see the movie that takes place after the zombie movie, where people have to reconcile living in a world where zombies can now happen. Because where I sit, zombies can't happen. But if I survived a zombie uprising, for the rest of my life, I would have to be like, zombies could happen at any moment. We thought it was impossible, but it's possible because it happened, and we won for now. And one of the issues with found footage that filmmakers run into is coming up with reasons why the camera is still filming. If there was something absolutely horrifying happening and everybody's lives were at risk, chances are we would turn off the camera and run. But that's not so with the zombie uprising, because that's a situation where we gotta film this because yesterday, zombies weren't real. Today, zombies are chasing us. In case we survive, we're gonna want to get this on tape.
I'm Simone Kisiel, and I am the director, producer, editor of the found footage horror comedy Housed. Housed is a comedic take on the zombie genre. A mixed-match group of college students get trapped at a house party and quickly realize that the hardest part of the apocalypse is actually surviving each other. Although some people aren't who they appear to be, and silly terror ensues as they all attempt to make it to the end credits. The inspiration for this film was rooted in the co-creators' experience of surviving the apocalyptic setting that was NYU, our shared love of horror, and found footage films that prove that even recent grads with literally no money can make a fun and crazy film. My favorite thing about Housed is how unapologetically silly it is. Of course, I love serious horror that takes on important social issues, and we made one of those too, a feminist horror anthology called Bugs, a trilogy. But found footage is an excellent way to escape from the horror that is reality. And when doing pure escapism, the sillier, the better.
Hey, I've seen this scene, but we love them anyway, so it's time to talk about familiar flourishes. Today's familiar flourish is one that does pop up in regular zombie movies a lot, but I actually think it's more effective when it's done in found footage films. And it's one I like to call Too Close to the Creepy Guy. And just from the title, I think you probably already know what I'm talking about, right? This is early on in the spread of the zombie virus, potentially even before the main characters know anything about it. They see some guy nearby just doing something weird. Maybe he's standing in the middle of the street, swaying slowly back and forth like he's drunk. Maybe it's someone hunched over in the corner of an apartment, making quiet moaning sounds. In almost every single example of this, the person has their back turned or they're in some way obscured so that no one can see their face. And here's the thing. The filmmakers know that we know. We've seen the preview, we read the description, we know this movie is about zombies. But the characters don't know. So they decide they're going to approach this person, to try and help them. A good example of this is in one of the well-known movies that we talked about this week, Wreck. The firemen show up to help an elderly woman who is stuck in her apartment. All the suspense in the scene comes from the fact that the audience obviously knows that the character's in danger, but the characters don't, until that one specific moment. You know what it is. The character suddenly spins around, and we see their milky white eyes and their pale face, and their mouth is gaping open as they moan and hiss and lunge at someone. That's when the shit hits the fan, and this creep starts biting down on anything nearby. The lucky ones are able to get away and shut the door, but usually someone is at least bitten, and sometimes completely killed and devoured or turned. Every single time, we know exactly what's going to happen, but there's nothing we can do to stop it. Scenes like this are the reason that people yell at the movie screen. And I mean that in a good way. But despite all of that, the scenes usually still work, and they're often one of the more effective scenes in the entire film. So, that's your familiar flourish for zombies. And now let's hear from another outstanding filmmaker who brought us one of these zombie found footage films.
Hi, my name is Robert Palmer. I am the director, co-writer, co-producer, along with Michael Weiss, of the award-winning zombie film I Am Alone. I Am Alone is a zombie film set in the mountains of Colorado. It's about Jacob Fitz, a survival host like Bear Grylls or Les Stroud, when him and his team get separated by design and a zombie infection starts to spread through the town, through the mountains, and Jacob gets bit, and it's really a story of his survival. He doesn't transform, which the CDC eventually realizes he might be immune to this virus, or at least has the antigens to survive longer than everybody else, so it becomes a race against time to try to get Jacob. For years, I made my living as a television reality producer. So I've traveled the world, traveled the country, and been on some amazing adventures. And so I felt like my love of horror films and reality TV, there were so few films that dealt with the actual transformation. It was either all about the blood, the guts, the kills, but there was never a story about an intimate man, somebody who's dying, somebody you could really get behind. And him being a television host, endeared him to the audience. So in our case, he was transforming, but really didn't know what was going on because he was isolated. So it becomes just another episode of his show dealing with another scenario while this incredibly horrific thing is happening around him. And slowly these infected people are coming up the mountain or even down the mountain. So yeah, it's very much in the vein of The Last Man on Earth. Couple things, kind of Easter eggy elements of I'm Alone that people may not know is the amount of John Carpenter film references that Michael and I threw out there. For instance, there's a shot at the cabin towards the end of the film. You see a wooden plank that says MacReady's Cabin. It's a reference to John Carpenter's The Thing, where Kurt Russell was MacReady. The Tates were a couple inside one of the barns. The camera team's code words, Dark Star, is obviously a direct reference to Carpenter's first film. So there's many, many more nods, not just to Carpenter films, but to pretty much every horror icon out there, plus some other little Easter eggs that we threw in there for the savvy horror fan. But yeah, we had fun making it, and I hope you have fun watching it.
All right, it's time for Lost and Found, where we talk about some more well-known movies in the subgenre that are worth checking out if you haven't seen them. And I also mentioned some lesser-known ones that you might not have heard about. And always, everybody's tastes are different, right? So some titles might not be for you, but this show is for all found footage fans. So if it's not your kind of movie, just skip it, move on to the next movie, let others enjoy what they enjoy. Now, first up are the more well-known movies. So we're going to start with Diary of the Dead, since we discussed this one a bit in a previous segment. Now, this is George Romero's first foray and only foray into found footage, and he uses the opportunity to comment on the way society has become obsessed with sensationalized news footage because of the 24-hour news cycle. The main character is similar to characters we've seen in other found footage movies who don't stop filming no matter what is happening around them. But unlike those other movies, Romero is doing this to prove a point. We've become so desensitized to violence on the other side of the screen that it doesn't seem real to us unless we can capture it in footage. Now, Romero kept to his habit of making his zombie movies with a mostly unknown cast, but you may notice that one of the short-lived ladies in this movie is actually Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black and She-Hulk. If you're a fan of zombies, Romero is appointment movie watching, so this one is a must-see. Now, next up is another movie from the same year that we briefly mentioned earlier, 2007's Wreck. This is a Spanish film from directors Jaume Balaguerro and Paco Plaza, and it follows a reporter who goes on an overnight ride-along with firefighters. They end up at an apartment complex to help an old woman, but she is infected with something horrible, and the reporter and firefighters find themselves suddenly trapped in the building when the military seals them off. Now, this is a fun, fast-paced, and gory film that has a lot of fun with the format by showing the cameraman actually using the camera to defend himself when the zombie action starts. Now, this was a huge hit that spawned several sequels and an American remake, but you definitely can't beat the original, and you should definitely check it out. And our third and final of the more well-known zombie movies is one that is only kind of a found footage movie. The first half of this film is a very weird and sometimes very funny zombie movie shot in a single take. And that by itself would be an impressive accomplishment and a fun watch. But there is a point at which the movie completely changes into something else. Now, I don't want to spoil what that change is, but let's just say that it redefines the movie that you watched up until that point in a very interesting way. Now, the cast is great, the movie is really inspiring to independent filmmakers, and this is one of the rare zombie films in which the characters are almost entirely likable, and you're really rooting for them. It's hard to tell you more than that without spoiling any of the fun surprises in store for you, so you'll just have to trust me on this one. So, those are the three more well-known titles. Let's take a quick break to hear from another fantastic filmmaker, and then I'll come back with more of the obscure recommendations that you love so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Doron Paz, and I co-directed, co-wrote, and co-produced, along with my brother Yoav, the film Jeruzalem, the found footage film, horror film, out in 2015. Jeruzalem is a found footage film about two American tourists coming to Jerusalem to explore the city, and they're having a great time there. But on Yom Kippur, the Judgment Day, the Jewish Judgment Day, hell break loose. And you know, the most logical place that the resurrection will start is, of course, Jerusalem. And that's what happens. And it's all demons started to come out of the ground, and they're trying to save themselves. And along with a group of local friends, they gathered around them, you know, and the body count starts. The inspiration for Jerusalem was actually an idea me and my brother had for a very long time, for a few years, that we love zombie movies, and we love demon movies. And we always thought to ourselves that, you know, you see a lot of zombie movies happening in New York, Boston, wherever, in every American city. But the most logical place, the first place you will think about to start a resurrection and dead people walking around the earth, when the dead will walk the earth, is of course Jerusalem. It's written in all the scriptures, and there's so many places in the Bible about it. You know, there's a famous quote we start in the movie, the beginning of the movie. It says there are 3 gates to hell: one in the desert, one in the sea, and one in Jerusalem. So we were just waiting for the opportunity to make a zombie movie happening in Jerusalem, and that's what we did. The funny story about Jerusalem is that we wanted to do a found footage film that's what we did. We shot the movie through Google Glass or Smart Glass, and it was funny because when we made the movie, I think it was 2014, maybe 2013, the hype was crazy about Google Glass, and everybody thought this is the next screen right after the iPhone, and now everybody's going to walk around with these silly glasses, and that's the next big thing. And we said, okay, so let's be the first found footage film to shoot the movie with his glasses. Another good advantage of it is that the character, the most important question in a found footage film is, why is the photographer still shooting when all this hell is going around him? But once you have a Google Glass, you don't need to think about it, because the character is running around with the glasses and it shoots all the time. As you know, apparently the smart glass still, as we speak, 2025 today, smart glass is not that popular. It's just maybe starting to be, but it didn't happen. But we still got the layer of technology we have in the movie. We have Facebook and face recognition and all kind of games and gadgets to make it a VR or an AR kind of experience in the film.
Okay, it is time to dive into our 5 lesser seen found footage zombie movies. We're going to start with the 2022 film Live Escape. If you've ever been watching an episode of Cops and you wondered what it would be like if a zombie just wandered into an episode, well, guess what? You don't have to wonder anymore. This movie follows 2 officers on duty who head to a strangely empty homeless shelter. And as they investigate the building and do some banter, they soon discover that they've stumbled onto a hotbed of zombies. Now, it's only a matter of time to get out with their lives and also to figure out how to stop the spread of the virus. It's surprising that Cops, which has been on for a whopping 36 seasons since 1989, has only had its format used a couple of times for horror purposes. The first time was in an episode of The X-Files back in 2000 called X-Cops. Now, this film comes from director Joe Lujan, a horror and sci-fi director who has 3 franchises under his belt: the Immortal War films and the Rust trilogy. And the 3rd franchise is actually this one, because Live Escape has a sequel called Live Survival. So if you like what you see here, there is more to be found. And next up is a really interesting film with a setup I've never seen before in a zombie movie. The film is By Day's End from 2020, and the story follows a lesbian couple who have fallen on hard times, and they're stuck living in a rundown motel trying to get by day. And when a virus starts causing people to turn into zombies, they hide inside their room and they try to survive. Now, I've seen plenty of zombie survival stories, especially ones where characters are trapped in a single location. But there's something about the unique circumstance of this story and its focus on the characters as much as the outbreak story that made it stand out as something different from a lot of the other titles. The performance of the central couple is really effective, and the movie is a quick watch at about 75 minutes, so definitely check it out when you get a chance. Now, title number 3 is truly a wild ride. Imagine a movie where 2 modern-day guys go on a quest with instructions from an old Jewish diary to find a secret underground military base full of Nazis. And the audience gets to watch every attack, zombie kill, and chase scene in first person. That's exactly what you get from Bunker of the Dead, the 2015 film from director Matthias Olaf Eick. Now, the first-person camera work, combined with attacking Nazis, gives this the feeling of like a World War II video game like Wolfenstein. Now, don't get me wrong, it is definitely a low-budget film, but they make the most of their budget with a ton of inventiveness and some wild action camera work. So if you're looking for something that's a combination of Frankenstein's army and Hardcore Henry, then this movie is definitely down your alley. It's currently streaming on several different platforms, so I think you should be able to find it pretty easily. Now, the next movie also has a sense of humor, but a lot less blood splatter and chaos. It's 2007's American Zombie, and it's a really fun observational comedy that's more in the mockumentary vein of Christopher Guest movies like Best in Show. Now, the movie revolves around documentary filmmakers turning their cameras on a small community of zombies living in Los Angeles, mostly keeping to themselves and just eking out an existence in a world where they're not really well received. The movie leans into the ethos of George Romero in that zombies are stand-ins for social issues. And in this film, they represent a small and insular marginalized community that could really be any real-life group that struggles for mainstream recognition and rights. If you're a fan of the Los Angeles comedy scene, you'll recognize a few faces here, including Jane Edith Wilson and Susie Nakamura, who is known for her roles on The West Wing and Avenue 5. Now, this one is a lot of fun, and it also works as an interesting look at the struggles of an underrepresented group. I think it's well worth seeking out. And the last of our 5 lesser-known zombie found footage movies is 2018's Eyes of the Dead. Now, the title is a little bit misleading because the eyes that we're seeing through in the movie aren't actually the zombies. They're one of the main characters in the story who's trying to survive the zombies. Now, while it is similar to Bunker of the Dead in that they both have POV camera work, this one actually has more in common with classic zombie movies and especially Night of the Living Dead. The story takes place on an old isolated farm, just like the original Romero film did, and I'm honestly surprised that this one is as obscure as it is. While it doesn't break a ton of new ground from a story perspective, it definitely breathes new life into the classic formula with the addition of the perspective. There are some clever visual moments and a scene with a kid that I won't spoil, but it's a pretty interesting take that I didn't see coming. The last time I checked, this one was available on like nearly 10 different streaming platforms, so you should still be able to find it. I hope there was something in this list of lesser known titles that you haven't seen and that sounds interesting to you. So, time to go add them to your watch list. I'm the fan who made this, and you're the fan who's watching this. So I think it's time for fan recommendations for other zombie found footage movies in a segment I like to call Fan Favorites.
All right, the movie Rekill, you gotta watch it. It's the best found footage zombie film you've seen. Very high action, very intense. They use head cams and body cams as the camera as they fight the horde of the undead. Great storyline. It has a plot twist towards the end. It's awesome. Don't miss it. It's really hard to find, but you'll love it if you find it.
If you're craving more zombie movies as much as zombies crave human flesh, and you want even more recommendations than we covered here today, well, I got great news for you. If you head over to Letterboxd, you can find a list of 46 zombie found footage films. So see which ones you've seen and which ones you need to add to your streaming queue. And do me a favor, don't forget, if you think of a movie that should be on the list and it's not there, leave a comment on the list so I can add it. That helps everybody. Now, before we head out of here, let's hear the final farewell from some great filmmakers who shared their films with us today. Special thanks to all of these super talented filmmakers.
Thank you for asking me to do this. I still get letters and drawings and photos of fans who appreciate my movie. I never thought that it would still be alive after 10 years. So I'm super honored. I'm working on a new project, which is probably financed before June. So I really hope I can give you another film very soon. Cheers.
Thank you so much for supporting found footage films. They offer an opportunity to filmmakers to make work on even a microscopic budget. And I know for me that some of my best, most brilliant creative moments have been born through the format and the limitations of found footage films.
I hope you guys get a chance to check out I Am Alone. It's won awards all over the world. Gareth David Lloyd is absolutely killer, no pun intended, in this movie. The town was so supportive making this film. You know, we've had a lot of luck along the way for a little Kickstarter film. If you get a chance, go back and check out our Kickstarter. But just want to thank the fans. If you're a horror fan or not, you know, check us out. Found footage is really near and dear to my heart, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Thank you very much for having me. Go watch the film if you didn't watch it yet. Go watch it again if you did watch it. And thank you very much from me and my brother, the Paz brothers. Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Well, we're now at the end of zombie found footage films. I hope you have a long list of cool zombie movies to go watch now. And do me a favor, remember to make sure to recommend the found footage movies you like to all the other found footage fans that you know. Indie filmmakers live and die by the good word of mouth from fans. So that is something big that you can do to support them. And don't forget, today's found footage fan is tomorrow's found footage filmmaker. So go grab your camera and get started. Maybe I'll be talking about your film next time. Thanks for watching.